Welcome to our current ERP Essentials webinar series. Today's session is Mastering Contract Proposals with Infor, Strategies for Success, presented by Jennifer Brown. Just a little bit about us here at Apex. Apex Systems is a leading global technology services business that incorporates industry insights and experience to deliver solutions that fulfill our clients' digital visions. Our Infor experts not only ensure seamless implementations, but also provide ongoing optimizations to enhance your business operations. Apex has a global presence in over 70 locations across the US, Canada, Mexico, UK, Europe, and India. So like I said, just a little bit about us today. I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Jennifer Brown, who's today's presenter. Let her introduce herself and present the contract information for today. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Anne. As mentioned, I'm Jennifer Brown, your presenter today. I'm a senior supply chain consultant with our ERP team with 14 years of functional experience on Infor products from Lawson version 9 to FSM. That said, let's get started with today's presentation. Today, we're going to talk about mastering contract proposals with Infor. And whether you are new to contract management or you're just looking to improve your skills, this session should provide you some valuable strategies and best practices to enhance your proposal process. We're going to look into how to leverage Infor's delivered features to streamline our workflows, to ensure compliance, and to help you create effective contracts. We will start with an overview of contract proposals, the setup requirements for putting this process into place, how to create proposals as a requester or a supplier, and how those proposals are processed by buyers or contract managers. We're going to begin with an overview of the process. So why would we want to use contract proposals? Contract proposals are a streamlined method for staff, like requesters or suppliers, who don't typically have access to the full contract creation, right? They don't have access to contract management. These proposals can then be reviewed and finalized by the contract managers or the buyers, reducing administrative burden and ensuring data accuracy. Contract proposals will make the contracts a single source of truth, right? We don't have more than one system that we're working in. We also have the ability to default values, field values, and also contract proposal templates to make sure that our required fields are populated correctly. Our contract managers and buyers will spend a lot less time gathering data and loading data for contracts, and of course, much less time tracking down data. Attachments will remain with the proposed contract throughout the activation process, and really minimal setup is required to implement this delivered process. Here's a quick look at the overall steps for contract proposal process. On the left side, you can see the steps for the requester and supplier. So the requester or supplier will create the contract proposal and enter header detail. They will also enter or attach contract lines. They can attach supporting documentation. They can answer questions if those have been added to the contract proposal template, and they can submit and follow up on proposed contracts. The contract manager or the buyer will then review those proposed contracts, and then they will need to take an action. They can accept, reject, or in some cases, return the contract proposal for more information. The contract manager and buyer can also add or update contract details and then release and activate the contract. So this streamlined path should help us reduce redundancy and ensure documentation compliance is maintained throughout the process. Now we're going to talk a little bit about setup for contract proposals. So what do we need to set up? Well, requester access to contract proposals is required by the RQ new contract proposal security class, but this is assigned by default. So if you wanted to remove it, you could do that, but out of the box, requesters have access to this. Supplier access is controlled at the supplier group. You can see on the screen on the supplier group under negotiate terms, there's a notice that says that it includes contract proposals and change orders, and this is under the supplier portal access tab of the supplier group. Another piece of setup is default values. These default values are set up at the contract group on the setup tab, and we can define default values for contract type, contract classification, and a primary contact for each method of contract proposal. There's also a checkbox that allows us to select or require a template to be selected whenever a requester creates a contract proposal. So when the requester creates that contract proposal, we're going to make sure that they select a template before they can submit. Setup can also include contract proposal templates. They can be created to default certain values to the requester contract proposals only, and those can include account distributions, questions, and articles and terms. So we're going to take a look at the templates on the next few screens. The contract proposal template default field options include contract type and classification, as well as subtype and subclassification. Supplier and supplier contact could be defaulted, as well as the contract document template and default accounting string. And you can see on this screen, excuse me, you can see on this slide that I have defaulted or entered a contract type and classification on this contract proposal template, as well as a GL account. The next tab of our contract proposal template is questions. So we can enter questions in the contract proposal template, and when the template is selected, those questions will default into the contract proposal wizard. Any required questions must be answered by the requester, or they will not be allowed to proceed through or submit the proposal. Setup on the contract proposal template can also include articles and terms. So you can see on the articles tab, for this particular contract proposal, I have added contracts and terms that will then default to the resulting contract proposal and contract. Now we're going to talk about contract proposal creation from both the requester and supplier perspectives. Requesters access contract proposals from the contract proposals and change orders menu option, and then they'll select propose a contract. That will open up the wizard. When requesters go to create the proposal, they'll start with the contract tab. You can see the fields include contract group and proposed contract name. Those are required. Template for the proposal, I have also made required, and I've selected a template in this proposal. I've added a description as well. and a supplier and supplier contact. Now, supplier and supplier contact are required on a proposal unless you enter the supplier name. So either those two fields must be entered or the supplier name must be entered, one or the other. We also have default accounting string and effective and expiration dates on the first tab. Then we would click next and proceed to the next tab. On the attachments tab, we can click the create for line items button to attach a file that contains the line items that I'd like to add to this contract. There's also a create button right next to it. So we have create for line items, and then this is create. So we could attach just any other supporting documentation here. The next tab is line items. On the line items tab, we can enter lines on an individual basis. So we would click enter new line information, and then we could enter the information for our proposed line. So in the slide here, I have proposed a line for weekly landscaping services. It's an amount service for $60,000 for the life of this particular contract line. If questions are part of the contract proposal template that you selected, the questions tab will also appear in the wizard during the contract proposal process. Required questions must be answered by the requester before submitting the proposed contract. I think it will allow you to proceed, but it's not going to allow you to submit until you answer those required questions. And the final tab is the proposed contract summary tab, where we have the ability to submit the proposed contract, or we could click the view hyperlink to review the information that we've put into the wizard prior to submission. If you selected view contract on the summary tab, it's going to open up and display like this with the tabs on the screen. You can tab through, review what you have entered, and then make changes here if you need to. And there's also a submit button available here. So you don't really have to go back. You can just click submit from this location. There's also a button to view the whole contract, and it will take you into a typical contract manager contract view. But a requester would not be able to make modifications in that area. Once a requester has submitted their contract proposal, they can review the proposed contracts that they've submitted underneath View My Proposed Contracts, the View My Proposed Contracts menu option. So they would go to Requester Contract Proposals and Change Orders and View My Proposed Contracts. And we can see that there's a proposal status on the right that tells us whether or not the proposal has been submitted, if it's been accepted or rejected, and then whether or not the contract is active, closed, or in draft status. Now we're going to move on to supplier contract proposal creation. So suppliers access contract proposal in supplier portal. They navigate to contracts, create a proposed contract in order to enter. They don't have a wizard. Instead, suppliers have more of a simplified form that pops up that they need to fill in. A contract title and a contract document are required to submit this contract proposal. The contract document becomes the red line document on a resulting contract. There are also 2 additional attachment fields that are available for supporting or extra supporting documentation, as well as effective and expiration dates. And of course, the submit button at the bottom. Once suppliers have submitted a contract, they can, of course, view their proposed contracts. So suppliers can view submitted contract proposals in Supplier Portal, Contracts Proposed. They have a status on the right-hand side, whether or not it's been submitted. There's also a separate tab for accepted or rejected contracts. And they have the ability to open the redline document from here, view any attachments, and email the primary contact on a given contract. Contract proposal creation can also happen with a new item proposal. So when a new item proposal has been approved, there's an option where we can check a box to create a proposed contract so that the new item or items can then be used for cost defaulting once that contract is completed. So if we check this box and click submit, a new contract proposal is going to appear for the contract manager or buyer based on the information entered into the item proposal. Now let's take a look at the processing of contract proposals. We've got them entered. Now what happens? Contract managers can view proposed contracts from the contract manager homepage in the On Your Radar section. There is a hyperlink for proposed contracts. Submitted proposed contracts can also be viewed under Contract Manager, Contracts, Proposed Contracts. Here is the buyer's view for proposed contracts. They are able to access proposals under Contracts, Proposed Contracts, and the list of proposed contracts, either buyer or contract manager, is going to display a proposal source. So it's going to tell us if that contract proposal has come from requesters, suppliers, or a new item proposal. There are three options for processing proposed contracts. We can accept, reject and close, or return for more information in the case of a requester proposal. An email is going to be sent to the proposal creator regardless of which selection you choose. When we accept a contract proposal, the proposed contract will move to the In Process tab of the contract of Manage Contracts. So it's going to be an in-process contract after being accepted. Once we do accept the contract, we may, of course, need to enter additional information that's required prior to release and activation. If we choose to reject and close the contract, obviously the contract will be closed. We will have a record that is still, we will keep the contract as a closed contract in the system. An action comment is also required to complete the rejection process. For requester proposals, we can also return the contract proposal for more information. Once we do that, an action comment is required. So we will enter an action comment that will then be emailed to the requester and also display on the email notifications tab of the contract proposal itself. Return proposals will display as proposed, not submitted in My Proposed Contracts. For requesters, our three options are here at the top: accept proposed contract, reject proposed contract, and return for more information. So those are the actions that a buyer or contract manager could take based on this contract proposal, based on their review of this contract proposal. And then a supplier contract proposal only gives us the accept or reject options. And then we also have the redline document that's attached. For all contracts that are created from a proposal, the proposal information displays on the Purchase Type tab. So you can see in this particular example, it was a requester submitted contract proposal. Now I'd like to move over into Infor. I'm going to stop the presentation for just a moment, and we're going to do a demo. Okay, so I'm going to start as a requester, and I am going to navigate to Contract Proposals and Change Orders, Propose a Contract. The first thing I'm going to select is my required contract group, and I'm going to enter a proposed contract name, and I'm going to enter Cardinal Contract for this. Now I need to select a template for proposal. If I try to click the next button, it's going to give me an error and tell me that I must select a contract template. So I am going to select my second contract template for product contracts, and I am going to be ordering from Cardinal. So I'm going to find my Cardinal vendor or supplier, I'm so sorry, and enter my supplier contact for Cardinal as well. And I will enter an effective and expiration date for this contract proposal. Once I've done that, I'm going to click the next and move on to the next tab. Okay, my next tab is the Attachments tab. And I'm going to use the Attachments tab, Create for Line Items button to enter my lines. So when I do that, it's going to pull up this little pop-up attachment for line items, and I'm going to go search for it. And I have my cardinal items right here, and I'm going to click Open and Submit. And those will be the line details for the contract that I'm creating. Now I'm going to click Next. The Line Items tab is next, but I'm not going to use the line items because I've already attached it or attached line items on the previous tab. So I do not have to enter these individually at this time. Then I'm going to click Next, and I have a required question that needs to be answered. The question is, have you attached lines using the standard Excel template? Yes, I have. I'm going to say yes. I've also included an attachment to the question where I can click and download a line upload template that I want my requesters to use. So this is just a way to put that template out there and make sure that the requesters are being compliant and using what I want them to. Then I'm going to click Next, and I have my proposed contract summary. I can view my contract, and I can see all the information that I entered. I've got my question answers, my attachments, and of course there are no lines because it's still in the attachment. I could click this button to view the whole contract. I have more access than a typical requester here though, so the buttons will be more inclusive than a typical requester would see. But you can see it just looks like it's just a contract. It's the same as the contract manager view. I'll click the back button, and then I will submit my contract proposal and click OK. Okay, so my proposal is submitted. I'm going to go view my proposed contracts, and I can see it's right here. And the proposal was submitted, and the contract's in draft status. Now I'm going to move over to the contract manager role and process this proposed contract. So I am going to actually go to On Your Radar, Proposed Contracts at the bottom. And then I see my Cardinal Health contract right here. I'm going to open it up. And then I will review this contract for completion, make sure that everything that needs to be filled in is filled in, or make any corrections as necessary. I think it looks good because I have everything I need. I can see I've got my line items right here. I'm going to download that. There it is. And when this opens, you can see that I have created this as an upload template for ISD. So I'm going to log in to ISD. Infor Spreadsheet Designer. And wait just a moment for the pop-up. Actually, I may have to move this a little bit to get to it. I'm going to click on my Infor tab, and I've hidden the properties. So I'm going to go ahead and click Properties to bring it back. And just do a quick once over to make sure I have everything I need. I've hidden a couple of columns here, so I need to unhide those. There we go. All right. And I think this is looking good for a contract proposal. I'm going to go ahead and accept this, but I also need to add the lines. So I will accept the proposed contract. It'll take just a moment to change. There we go. And then I can create my lines. So I'm just going to go ahead and upload these. Oops, almost forgot. Need that contract number. And I will upload. And then once the upload is finished, I'll return and refresh. And there are my contract lines. And I will now create my contract document from the document template. And then I will release and activate this contract. I'm going to click activate. I'm getting my pop-up that lets me know that item worksheet records will be created for specials, but we don't have any. I'll click OK. And then the contract will be active. And on the purchase type tab, you can see this is an accepted contract proposal from requester Anne.